Chapter 11. Exciting Times. Church was jolly, outgoing, and fun to be around. Charles Clark recalled, "Church could be as nice as could be if he liked you. He'd do anything for you. He'd give you the shirt off his back, and had almost a split personality." Many others have commented on the distinctive, captivating, and attractive grin that lit up Church's face. Clark said, "If he was shooting you between the eyes, he'd have the prettiest smile you ever saw. That's the way he was." On the other hand, Church would die for a true friend. With a great deal of charisma, Church attracted people to him like a magnet. He had a good personality, was very accommodating and outgoing, and seemed to be the happiest person around. As a result, he was seldom alone. One person said, "Church could talk the bark off a tree." He knew 10 times more people than his brother Charlie. He was outgoing and made more friends. Church drank some, but he hardly ever was seen drunk. He often peddled pocket knives, shoes, shoestrings, belts, bridles, check lines, pistol holders, and other leather goods. Church frequently delivered a load of whiskey to Dayton. After the delivery, he normally parked his car in front of the courthouse on Main Street and peddled his leather goods while talking to everyone who came along. He made many friends this way. Church also kept honeybees and sold honey in Dayton and Pikeville. He could have made a good living even without illegal whiskey. He'd take a load of whiskey and pull right into Dayton, park on the street anywhere he wanted to. And it was no more than if you had a load of groceries in the car, added Clark. You didn't lay a hand on that car. He'd get out and sit on the sidewalk. Boy, his Dodge car was just smashed up, with something spread over it so you couldn't even see the whiskey. Deputy Sheriff Bob Evans came walking up there and told him that he was going to search his car, and Church said, "Why, yeah, boy." Always with a smile on his face, he said, "Let's see your search warrant." The deputy said, "I don't have a search warrant." And Church said, "Oh, yes, you do. That's the law. I'm a law-abiding citizen, and we're going to go by the law. And the law says before you can search my car, you have to have a search warrant, 'cause I'm not even driving. My car's just sitting here. You can't go in my car and just start doing whatever you want. By doggies, you know that." After a moment or two, Church said, "Okay, if you're so determined, you go ahead and stick your head in my car. And when you do, you'll never stick it in nobody else's. Or yours either. That's the last car you'll ever stick your head in." Bob said, "Well, I'll go get a search warrant, and I will search it." And Church said, "That's fine. I won't even question it. You know me, I'm a law-abiding citizen. You just go ahead and get it, old buddy, and we just won't have no trouble, and you can search my car." Well, when he left for the search warrant, Church just got in his car and drove off. All he had to do was unload it. That wasn't Church's only run-in with a Ray County deputy. Church would sometimes set off and hide his whiskey at the edge of the State Route 30 on the west side of Dayton, and just run out of town and get a little as he sold it. Clark said they had a little deputy sheriff or a constable called Nubbing. You could run him out of the county with a wet shuck. He got up there sneaking around, hunting for Church's whiskey. He knew he had it hidden up there, kegs of it, but he did not know where Church was up there. Church let him get in, about so close, and cut loose a dropping branches over his head, deliberately, with that old slide-action shotgun. They said he was just covering him up with leaves and branches, just a-shooting right over his head. And they said nubbing toward the whole side of that mountain up getting out there. Church was wanting to let him know, "Boy, you ain't got no business here, and I wouldn't advise you to come back." Church made many trips to Dayton in the 30s and became good friends and was a drinking buddy with Jerry Travis, who lived in Ray County. Jay was much younger than Church. They had a lot of fun together, going to restaurants, taverns, carnivals, and other functions in Dayton. Jay said Church attracted people to him with his friendly and outgoing personality. He was always smiling, grinning, and cutting up with people. Church was a handsome man who was a hit with the women. He liked the women, and they liked him. Women were drawn to Church like filing to a magnet. He was always joking with people and making them laugh. Jay said Church knew a world of people, most of whom were his friends. Church spent a lot of time in Dayton, where many people came to him to shoot the bull. Church was always doing something for his many friends. He was as good a man as you would want to meet. And if you didn't cross him, you couldn't ask for a better friend. He liked to drink whiskey, but knew when to stop and was always in control of himself. Jay drank whiskey with Church on many occasions, but he never saw Church drunk. About 1932, a Texas company owned by Mr. Hayworth opened a sandstone quarry on Walden's Ridge and hired several local men. Hayworth talked Church into setting up a blacksmith shop in his quarry. Parker Rice was working there. Mr. Hayworth said he was losing money and was not able to pay the work hands all of the wages owed him. Church told Hayworth the work hands were poor with families to feed, and his first priority should be to pay them. Church volunteered to let Hayworth pay him later if necessary. Soon thereafter, the business folded, leaving $600 owed to Church and $93 owed to Parker, which was never paid. Parker was very appreciative of Church's good-heartedness and feelings for his neighbor. He indicated Church would loan his neighbors or his friends any of his tools or farming equipment they needed and was very accommodating. One day, Church went by the Owen Simon house on the mountain and struck up a conversation, said Charles Clark. Owen had a large amount of cross ties cut, piled and ready to be sold. He told Church he needed to get the ties to market as soon as possible, but he was fretting because he could only take one load a day to Dayton. Church happened to be sending his work hand, Coy Clark, to Dayton to get a load of fertilizer. Church told Owen, well, by doggies, I know how to handle one of them loads. Old Coy is going off the mountain empty, by doggies. Pile my wagon just as high as you can get 'em. You can't break it or the mules either. Church had a big pair of mules and a wagon with 4-inch tires. Coy took a large load to the tie yard before loading his wagon with fertilizer for the return trip. Clark indicated that that was typical of Church. If he was your friend, he'd do just about anything for you. Herschel Clark, a neighbor, said when he was a young man that Church gave him and his brother Coy work on his farm during the Depression in the 30s, when jobs and money were extremely hard to come by. The Clark family was poor, and they couldn't find any other jobs to support themselves. Herschel thought Church gave them work mainly to help them, and he always spoke highly of Church Lester. A friend and neighbor, N.J. Farmer, said Church, his second wife, Evelyn Solomon, her brother, Lloyd Solomon, and Lloyd's wife, who was N.J.'s sister, visited his family often, and he often visited Church and Evelyn's home where Lloyd and his sister were also there. N.J. knew Church well and said Church was a good man. He recalls Church giving him a pocket knife in the mid-1930s. N.J. said Church would help anyone he could. Church paid N.J. to pick blackberries for him. Church's uncle, Frank Hancock, told a story about riding to Chattanooga with Church one day in the mid or late 1920s. As they were driving through Saudi, they saw a teenage boy dragging a girl by her hair on the side of the road. Church stopped his car, grabbed his .45 Army pistol, and walked toward the boy. The boy turned the girl loose and started shaking like a leaf. Church told him, "Don't let me ever catch you doing that again." As Church drove off, his Uncle Frank said, "Church, why'd you do that?" "That wasn't a thing to you," Church replied. "Uncle Frank, when I see something like that, I make it my business." Alice Little lived on a farm she owned in the valley below the old Lester home place on the mountain and was well acquainted with the Lester family. Sometime between 1926 and 1928, Alice was allegedly to have offered Church money to kill her own daughter, Emma, and Emma's husband, Hondo Angel. Church made it clear to Alice he'd have no part in that. Church didn't approve of this killing, which indicates he did have scruples and he was not a hired gun. The many details of this story behind the problems between Alice and her daughter Emma may be explained in a future book in the Bloody Bledsoe series. After Church and Mary's divorce, Church normally cooked a squirrel or a chicken for his lunch, before he went to the still or his fields to work each morning. Church had a wood stove with a warmer compartment beside the oven where he would leave food in it, go off for a few hours, and the warmer would keep the food warm. Back then there were seldom locks on the doors of a house. The young Dave Jurgen and his brothers living nearby started slipping into Church's house and eating his lunch before he came in around noon. One morning, Church killed an old tomcat and cooked it in the same pot in which he usually cooked the squirrel or chicken. The boys came by and tried to eat that tough old tomcat. They said it tasted awful. Church told the neighbors what he'd done and got a big laugh out of the trick he played on that boys. That was the last time those Jurgen boys ate Church's lunch. Charles Clark's dad and Church were good friends. Church was often at the Clark home. One time, Church went by and told Clark's father, "Bye, doggies, I just got done making some razor strops, and I was coming over this way and thought I'd bring you one." Clark said sometimes Church would prank around with his father with his gun. One day, Clark got behind Church and grabbed his gun and said, "All right now, we're talking a different story." Church went along with the prank and said, "Bye, doggies, I'm your boy. Just anything you want me to do, 'cause that's mean. I don't like that." Just like two kids playing. After Clark handed his gun back, Church said, "Bye, doggies, the shoe's on the other foot now." It was reported that sometime after the late 1920s, Lige Kazar, Andy Sims, Horton Bedwell, and Church Lester happened to run into each other at a spot near Rigsby Cemetery. Kazar was drinking heavily and started telling Church what he was going to do to him. Church knew it was the whiskey talking and tried to calm Kazar down by saying, "Aren't you ashamed to be saying things like that to me?" That emboldened Kazar. Then he started cussing and calling Church names. Like a flash, the super-quick Church whipped out his Army .45 pistol and pointed at Kazar and said, "You'll hush now, or I'll kill you so dead the buzzards won't even pick you." Kazar quickly turned and walked away. Church's friend, Horton Bedwell, laughed and said, "I guess he had more important business on down the road."